Okay.
You rolling? Okay. So anyway, I'll talk about this legend or this prophecy of the black snake. It was on social media quite a bit in connection with the No DAPL movement, the Dakota Access Pipeline, in which Standing Rock, it occurred on Standing Rock Reservation where I live, and so then people did refer to this, they call it the legend or prophecy of the black snake. And so a lot of people just assumed that the black snake referred only to the pipeline itself that carried that crude oil under the Missouri River. But there's really an underlying narrative or tradition behind this, or I should say a legend. And this legend goes back to this real ancient oral history in which they refer to these beings that were described as being monsters that controlled the earth, they dominated the earth, and these beings, when they moved, the earth would shake, and they had fangs, and they had claws, and they had scales, and they had horns, and they controlled the seas and the earth and the air and everything. They controlled this world for an eternity, and so we call them Unkdechila. Unkdechila is the traditional word in the Dakota language. And of course, if you really think about it, what they're referring to as dinosaurs. And of course, the age of the dinosaurs was 260 million years, something like this. And they did, of course, the science of paleontology affirms that they did control all the biosphere, all the different aspects of the biosphere, whether it's the seas or the land or the air. And so they completely took over all this. And so then, according to this legend, a heavenly force, we call it the Wakia, which is a heavenly agency. And so this was decreed by the creator, by Wakantanka, the Great Spirit, that these Unkdechila would be cleansed from the earth. In other words, this defilement would be, earth would be purged of that. And so this heavenly agency, we say the Wakia, came and they wiped the Unkdechila off the earth. Of course, what happened, we know this, is that according to science, it was a meteor that came down and hit the earth there, somewhere around Yucatan Peninsula, and this set up a cataclysmic event that resulted in like 90-some%, 98, 99% extinction of all the earth life forms. But anyway, so this is what the legend says. It was a heavenly force that caused this Unkdechila to be wiped out. And so then the legend says that these Unkdechila, and of course, their remains went into the earth. It was not just the fauna, but the flora, everything associated with that Cenozoic era, that 260 million year period that went into the earth and was transformed or transmuted into what's called, today the fossil fuels. But interestingly enough, according to that legend, it was foretold that these Unkdechila would reappear. They'd come back and try to seize control. And I like this word. It's a pretty interesting word. It's called recrudescence. Have you heard this word? Recrudescence. It's used in the writings of Shoghi Effendi. He uses this word, but it means the reappearance of some kind of recrudescence means like some kind of a negative force that recurs. It's got that word crude in there, CRUDE. I like that, recrudescence. So in other words, the legend has that there will be recrudescence of this Unkdechila. They come back and they'd strive to control the earth. But we can see that this is not a literal prophecy. It's not literal. In other words, the dinosaurs are not going to come back. They're not going to come back. But when you really think about it, the fossil fuels have been exploited and they're all being extracted out of the earth. And of course, being that we do live in a material civilization, you could say that this monstrosity of the Unkdechila, it is experiencing a recrudescence or a manifestation in that the fossil fuels is what powers and empowers the forces of materialism in the heart of man. So in other words, I'm talking about, the avarice, the greed, the ego-driven society that we currently live in. And so again, according to the legend of the Uktechila, the prophecy of the return, again, it would be the same thing. Only a heavenly force can counteract and can control and subdue the Uktechila. So now myself as a Baha'i, I see that we are living at a time now when we are living at it's like a life and death struggle that we're in order to build up the forces of this heavenly forces and spiritual forces, which is what the Baha'i world is currently doing in creating the infrastructure upon which the spiritual foundation can be laid, which of course is the Institute process, the development, the spiritualization not only of individuals and families but also communities, to enable this divine springtime to take root in the collective heart of humanity and to grow and to develop and to create this beauty of a springtime that autumn shall never overtake, and to overtake the dark forces. In this particular case, it should be symbolized by this Uktechila coming back. So this is the current process as I see it that we're involved in now, but how it relates to that legend.